The little clock by the door read just after 6 a.m. It was too early to go find Eliza and tell her we were leaving. I wasn't sure what I'd do all day while Ephraim was in session. Women were expressly forbidden from attending sessions. They claimed it was because the men behaved poorly. That might have been partially true, but it was mostly because they didn't value women as humans just yet. The rage and injustice I felt was easy to squash when I remembered it was the 1700s. I wondered if I should just wander the streets of New York and take it all in, something I hadn't really had time to do in the 2 weeks we'd been here. The thought of donning all those layers, then walking around in the heat was unbearable, though. I would likely just make my way to Mrs. Bleeker's again, just to follow up with Dolly Madison. I wanted to weep at the thought of that corset, but I wouldn't let Declan down. I'd be a good girl and play my part. I thought I'd been making headway with Mrs. Madison, and maybe she'd brought it up with her husband, and that was what drove him to the Hamiltons last night. I felt disoriented with having to guess without our research and backgrounds. I was desperately afraid we were going to make this rift worse rather than repair it. Everything had been going so smoothly until yesterday, too. Without warning, a thunderous boom sounded outside. Ephraim sat straight up in bed, swearing loudly. "What the hell?" I pulled the curtain aside and flung the window open. Without thinking, I poked my head out, looking up and down the street. It was still early, so there were few people out, but the ones that were ran down the road, away from the intersection next to the Hamiltons' house. "People are running away. What is going on?" I asked, craning to look down the street. "Throw something on," Ephraim said as he pulled his shirt over his head. I looked wildly around and saw a wardrobe across the room. I dashed to it and found a silk Chinese robe and leather slippers in it. "Jackpot," I said, slinging the robe over the shift I wore and pulling the slippers, which were too small, onto my feet. The leather stretched a bit, though, and made room, albeit cramped, for my toes. "Ready?" Ephraim asked, tying his drive to his waist. I grabbed my drive and tied it around my own waist before closing the robe. We both snatched our knives off the washstand. "Ready," I agreed. He flung the door open and I rushed out. I heard the Hamilton children stirring, calling out to their mother, wondering what was happening. The floor rumbled under our feet as if it was an earthquake. Did New York get earthquakes? I led us down the stairs and to the front door, Ephraim right at my heels. I paused at the door and turned to him. He nodded once. He was ready. I unlocked the heavy door and pulled it open. Without hesitation, Ephraim scooted past me and tore down the stairs. I followed immediately, and we took off to the right, toward whatever it was that the few folks on the street were running from. Ephraim turned the corner first, then I followed. He stopped so abruptly that I slammed into his back and stumbled a few steps until I sat down hard. I started to call out to him, but my voice died as soon as I saw what had halted him. "Gwen!" Ephraim turned and offered me a hand up to my feet. As he pulled, we both gasped. "What the hell?" he said again. I just shook my head, wide-eyed, as two enormous military green tanks rumbled slowly down the cobblestones, one after the other. "This is bad. This is really, really bad," I said, looking wildly around. "Ephraim, what is this?" Tanks. Modern tanks. In Revolutionary-era New York. Nope, this was not okay. "Do you see a flag or insignia on them anywhere?" Ephraim asked. I didn't, and scanned every inch I could see for anything that would tell us who these people were. "We need to go. We can't fight what we don't understand," I said, reaching into my robe and freeing my jump drive. "But all these people," Ephraim said. "We'll come back. We can come right back. We won't even miss a moment, but we need intel. We might need backup. We're blind here, totally useless," I said. Ephraim was nodding before I'd even finished. I pulled the glove that had been wrapped around the drive over my hand, and Ephraim took the second glove and did the same. I pressed home, and we were on our way within a blink. The tanks rolling up Wall Street were the last thing I saw.